but also for people to be apostates, to exit their religion, to be able to stand in a place where they choose, for instance, to be culturally Christian, Hindu, Muslim, but not religiously, to have no relationship to any form of faith, and certainly not, whether they're believers or not, to be represented as being part of a faith community for purposes of policy. And I absolutely endorse the fears that were expressed from the platform earlier about the impact that the so-called big society and the measures that are taking place that are destroying welfare provision, the enabling state. They're destroying many, many aspects of the state as an enabler and of its safety nets, and substituting for it institutions. Well, we don't know what they're going to substitute exactly, but what we can discern is that they are going to continue some of the worst practices that the Labour government had, which is to engage with people on the basis of faith and set up providers of services on that basis. And I think that policy, which is absolutely an inherited policy of colonialism, which is being promoted abroad by British development policies in various ways, is absolutely dangerous. And it will reduce the existing secular spaces, many of which are the traditional, democratic, anti-racist, and feminist spaces that have existed for the last 20 or 30 years, whose funding, as we've been told, is being cut, and will substitute for them groups based on evangelical and extremist forms of religion. Now, why do I think that? It's because if we look at what Labour did, and we know that they did this through analysing the Prevent programme, through analysing leaks of government documents, which showed that particular political parties operating in the Middle East and in South Asia have not only been operating here for many years, but have been welcomed and endorsed as representatives of moderate Islam, that is the Jamaat-e-Islami and the Muslim Brotherhood. And there are people within the government who promote policies based on liaising, allying, and promoting these people as leaders of the community, of these faith communities. So faith communities, as they're defined and as they actually exist in Britain, are not simply people who choose to belong and to get together to discuss or interpret their faith or do, celebrate the various aspects of their religion. They are very often led by, and not only by extremists among Muslims, but extremists among Christians and Hindus, and probably Sikhs as well. I haven't examined the Sikh issue. Now, that is happening at the same time in which the Equalities Act, which has been a site of huge contestation, which gives us a chance to look at issues of discrimination within the framework of the Single Equality Act, but which may enable people to discuss, to regard as discrimination, acts which are simply limitations on the right to express religious belief, because it is something that actually not offends the rights of others, but actually threatens the rights of others. And I think we have to be very, very careful where we want to place limitations on expression or action because of offense, issues of offense, rather than issues of threat to kill, threat to restrict, and so on. And what we have now is a political context where not only has the government promoted the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Evangelical Alliance, and the Hindu Forum in setting them up as in advisory bodies and so on to monitor, among other things, the Equalities Act and to discuss, interfaith matters. But the left has also decided, through the Stop the War Coalition, for instance, where Race and Class analysed how the Stop the War Coalition and the SWP within it had chosen to ally with the Muslim Brotherhood as a sign of their support for, the threat of, what was happening to Muslims in the war on terror and so on. And I think we're not going to, nobody's going to contest that Muslims have had a very hard time during the war on terror and 9/11 and 7/7 and so on. But I think what we have not sufficiently analyzed is that some Muslim leaders have had a very good time out of this, because they have been able to get into bed with the government on the one side and with the left on the other side, that was supposed, the side that was supporting the war on terror and the side that was opposing it. And who was squeezed in that? People who fought within a secular framework were being squeezed in that, and they included among them many Muslims. So, for instance, Dr. Ghiyasuddin Siddiqui, who was a former member of the Jamaat-e-Islami, who has stood by and supported women's rights, whether within progressive interpretations of Islam or within a secular context, who's talked about child abuse in mosques, has raised many, many issues that people get attacked for raising, was forced out of the Stop the War Coalition, the leadership of the Stop the War Coalition. Younger groups of Muslims examining their identity in autonomous fora, thinking about what it meant to be a Muslim in today's context, and examining issues of extremism within their communities, also found these debates and ideas and these kind of quite fledgling things shut down by the way in which the Stop the War Coalition formally organized itself with the Muslim Brotherhood as a separate bloc. They didn't merge. They formed, as Race and Class described it, formed an alliance in which the Muslim Brotherhood was one bloc, so Muslims were to be mobilized as a bloc, a communal bloc among Muslims, and I suppose everybody else was to be mobilized by the Muslim Brotherhood, by the Stop the War Coalition. I think that politically puts us in a very dangerous place when we're discussing what's going to happen under what can be, called the sort of neoliberal agenda or the big society agenda that is actually smashing a common basis of citizenship and a common entitlement to health services, maternity services within health services, employment, and so on. And I think that danger can barely be articulated in a discussion that assumes faith communities as a form of given.